Most men are taught, directly or indirectly, that attraction is a reward for self-improvement. Lift heavier, earn more, dress better, build status, upgrade your lifestyle, and women will naturally become emotionally invested. On the surface, this belief feels logical. After all, improvement does create attention. It creates compliments, smiles, flirting, and sometimes even dates. Yet for many men, something feels off, despite doing everything right. The connection never deepens. She enjoys his presence, but she does not miss him when he leaves. She responds, but rarely initiates. She is friendly, but never attached. And eventually, interest fades as quietly as it appeared. This is where most men misunderstand attraction. Being impressive is not the same as being memorable. External upgrades can spark curiosity, but they rarely leave an emotional imprint. A woman may admire what you have built, but admiration does not equal investment. Emotional investment only forms when something inside her shifts. When your presence alters her internal state in a way that lingers long after the interaction ends. Without that internal shift, attraction remains shallow and temporary, no matter how polished the surface looks. The uncomfortable truth is that many men rely on external achievements as a substitute for emotional depth. They expect their effort to be felt automatically, as if success itself carries emotional weight. But attraction does not work like a transaction. A woman does not bond because you check the right boxes. She bonds because something about being around you changes how she experiences herself. When that change does not happen, interest quietly evaporates, and men are left confused, frustrated, and questioning their worth. This is why some men who appear ordinary on the outside create far stronger reactions than men who seem exceptional. The difference is not luck or mystery, it is psychological impact. Attraction without emotional imprint fades quickly, while emotional imprint creates memory, replay, and attachment. Until a man understands this distinction, he will continue improving what is visible while ignoring what actually matters. And that leads to a deeper question. Most men never ask themselves if women are not attaching to what you show. Then what exactly are they attaching to instead? Women do not become emotionally addicted to features. They become addicted to feelings. This is the fundamental principle most men overlook, because it contradicts how men themselves experience attraction. Men tend to bond through visual cues and tangible traits, so they assume women operate the same way. But women bond through internal states. What stays with her is not your body, your car, or your resume. What stays with her is how she felt while she was with you, and more importantly, how she feels after you are gone. This explains why two men can walk into the same room and receive completely different reactions, even if one appears objectively superior on paper. One man may be taller, fitter, wealthier, and better dressed, yet he leaves no lasting impression. The other may lack many of those advantages, yet women find themselves thinking about him later, replaying conversations, and feeling a subtle pull they cannot logically explain. The difference lies in emotional impact, not external value. Feelings bypass logic. A woman can logically acknowledge that a man is attractive or successful, yet feel nothing emotionally binding toward him. Emotional addiction forms when her nervous system associates your presence with a distinct internal experience. That experience might be calm, safety, excitement, curiosity, or emotional grounding, but it must be felt, not observed. When a man focuses only on effort and presentation, he often creates stimulation without resonance. He does things, but nothing lands. This is why effort without emotional impact leads to invisibility. Many men exhaust themselves trying to perform attraction, believing that consistency and intensity will eventually be rewarded. Instead, they blend into the background. Emotional experience always outweighs logical evaluation. A woman may forget what you said or what you wore, but she will remember how she felt when she laughed without forcing it, when she relaxed without guarding herself, or when silence felt comfortable instead of awkward. The mistake is assuming attraction accumulates through addition. In reality, it imprints through depth. One emotionally charged moment outweighs 100 impressive gestures. Until a man learns to create emotional resonance instead of performing value, he will continue to be noticed, but not chosen. And this misunderstanding naturally leads men into the next trap, one that silently kills attraction before it ever has a chance to grow. When a man believes attraction must be earned, he inevitably adopts a mindset of trying to win her. This shift is subtle, but women detect it instantly. His attention becomes strategic, his behavior becomes calculated, and his presence carries an underlying tension. He is no longer simply sharing moments, he is performing for approval. Every joke, compliment, and gesture carries a hidden question: is this working? That question alone is enough to suffocate attraction. From the outside, this effort can look like confidence. He dresses well, plans carefully, and shows initiative. But emotionally, it feels different. Confidence rooted in inner stability feels calm and unforced. Confidence rooted in outcome feels needy, even when disguised as charm. Women sense when a man's emotional state depends on how they respond to him. When that dependency is present, emotional involvement never fully activates. Trying to win her places her in the position of judge and places him in the position of applicant. This dynamic is fatal to attraction. A woman cannot become emotionally addicted to a man who needs her approval to feel whole. Addiction requires tension, and tension disappears when the man is emotionally leaning forward. The more he tries to secure her interest, the more predictable he becomes. Predictability kills curiosity, and without curiosity, attachment cannot form. This is why over-effort often backfires. Long explanations, excessive reassurance, constant availability, and rapid emotional disclosure are not signs of depth. They are signals of anxiety. Even when a woman enjoys the attention, her nervous system does not register safety or intrigue. It registers pressure. She may stay engaged out of politeness or momentary validation, but the emotional hook never sets. Women are not drawn to men who need them. They are drawn to men who are already complete. Completeness creates emotional freedom, and emotional freedom creates space for attraction to grow. When a man stops trying to win, something shifts. His energy relaxes. His words carry less weight, but more impact. He no longer chases reactions, and that absence of chase becomes noticeable. This brings us to a critical realization. Attraction is not responding to what a man does, but to who he is being internally while he does it. And that internal state is the true source of emotional pull. A woman's attraction does not respond to a man's achievements as much as it responds to his internal state. Internal state is the emotional and psychological condition a man carries within himself, regardless of what is happening around him. It is the calm beneath his words, the steadiness behind his actions, and the emotional solidity he radiates without trying. This is what women feel before they consciously think anything at all. A man who is internally stable does not rush to explain himself, defend his intentions, or adjust his behavior to secure approval. He is unshakable, not because he is indifferent, but because his sense of self does not depend on external validation. When he speaks, there is no urgency. When he listens, there is no hunger. When silence appears, it does not threaten him. This emotional self-containment creates a subtle gravity that pulls people in. Women are deeply responsive to this state because it offers something rare: nervous system relief. Around a man who is emotionally reactive, a woman must stay alert. She feels responsible for managing his mood, his expectations, or his insecurities. Around a man who is internally grounded, that responsibility dissolves. She can relax. She can be present. And presence is the doorway to emotional attachment. What makes this internal state so powerful is that it lingers. After the interaction ends, the feeling does not immediately fade. Her mind replays moments, not because they were dramatic, but because they felt different. The calm, the ease, the lack of pressure create a mental loop. She begins to associate him with emotional clarity and stability, and that association deepens with time. Most men unintentionally repel attraction by doing the opposite. They chase, over-explain, justify their value, and emotionally adjust themselves in real time. These behaviors signal instability, even when wrapped in good intentions. Emotional neediness dissolves intrigue instantly because it transfers emotional weight onto the woman. Attraction grows when a man's emotional center remains intact regardless of the outcome. When he does not collapse inward or lean outward. His presence becomes something a woman feels rather than evaluates. And once attraction shifts from evaluation to feeling, it begins to operate beneath conscious control. This leads directly to a paradox most men resist, but which lies at the core of emotional addiction: stillness. Stillness is one of the most misunderstood forces in attraction. Most men believe emotional addiction is created through stimulation, excitement, constant interaction, and momentum. In reality, it is built through the opposite. Stillness creates contrast, and contrast creates depth. A man who can sit calmly in his own presence without performing or seeking validation sends a powerful signal he is not chasing relief through others. Stillness begins internally. It requires a man to sit with discomfort, insecurity, and silence without immediately trying to escape them. Instead of filling gaps with jokes, explanations, or constant messages, he allows space to exist. This space is not emptiness, it is containment. It shows that his emotional world is stable enough to hold tension without collapsing. When a man releases the need to be liked, something remarkable happens. His behavior simplifies. He stops proving his worth. He stops narrating his intentions. He stops chasing emotional reassurance. What remains is a grounded presence that feels solid and self-directed. Women feel this shift immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. Stillness creates emotional addiction because it reverses the usual dynamic. Instead of the man reaching toward the woman for validation, the woman begins reaching inward to understand what she feels around him. Silence becomes meaningful. Pauses become charged. The absence of emotional grabbing creates curiosity. And curiosity is far more powerful than attention-seeking. This is why men who are comfortable doing less often create stronger reactions than men who do more. Their presence feels intentional rather than reactive. They are not trying to control the emotional direction of the interaction. They are allowing it to unfold. This lack of force gives the woman space to invest emotionally at her own pace, which deepens attachment rather than rushing it. When a man stops asking to be chosen, attraction reverses direction. The energy shifts from pursuit to pull. Emotional independence becomes visible, and with it comes a sense of respect that precedes desire. Yet stillness alone is not enough. For emotional addiction to fully form, it must be paired with another element that many men accidentally destroy too early: the balance between safety and uncertainty. Emotional pull is created through a precise balance that most men never learn to maintain. Women are drawn to a man when they feel emotionally safe in his presence, yet unable to fully predict or control him. Safety allows her nervous system to relax, while uncertainty keeps her emotionally engaged. Remove either one, and attraction weakens. Too much uncertainty creates anxiety. Too much safety creates boredom. The power lies in the combination. Emotional safety does not come from reassurance, constant communication, or oversharing. It comes from consistency of internal state. A man who is calm, respectful, and emotionally regulated creates safety without saying a word about his intentions. He does not rush intimacy or pressure connection. He allows things to develop naturally, which signals maturity and self-trust. Uncertainty, however, is where most men make critical mistakes. When interest begins, they often respond by giving too much too soon. They text constantly, explain their feelings in detail, share personal struggles prematurely, and make their availability obvious. What they believe is honesty and openness is experienced as emotional flooding. Mystery disappears, tension collapses, and the emotional dynamic flattens. Uncertainty does not mean coldness or manipulation. It simply means that emotional access is not handed over freely. A man does not reveal his entire emotional world immediately. He allows connection to deepen through shared experiences rather than verbal confirmation. This creates curiosity. She wonders how he thinks, how he feels, and where she stands. That wondering keeps her emotionally engaged long after the interaction ends. Curiosity fuels emotional attachment because it invites participation. When everything is given up front, there is nothing left to discover. But when emotional availability is earned gradually, investment grows organically. She begins to lean in, not because she is chasing validation, but because her interest is activated internally. The men who struggle most are not unkind or dishonest. They simply confuse emotional availability with emotional exposure. True availability is stable and responsive, not overwhelming. It meets the moment rather than trying to secure the future. When a man understands how to hold both safety and uncertainty, attraction stops being something he tries to create and becomes something that unfolds naturally. And from that point, a deeper psychological shift begins to occur, one rooted not in distance or games, but in a very specific kind of unavailability that most men misunderstand. Unavailability is often misunderstood as emotional distance, coldness, or strategic withdrawal. In reality, true unavailability has nothing to do with games or manipulation. It is a natural byproduct of a man who is not emotionally dependent on how a woman responds to him. He is present when he is present, and fulfilled when he is not. His life continues to move forward with or without her participation. This kind of unavailability is subtle, but powerful. It shows up in the way a man does not rush to manage her perceptions, fix her emotions, or secure reassurance. He does not monitor her tone for hidden meanings or adjust his behavior to avoid losing interest. He allows her reactions to be hers, without taking responsibility for them. This communicates something rare: emotional autonomy. Psychologically, this autonomy creates a shift. When a woman senses that she cannot control a man's emotional state, her attention naturally turns inward. She begins to wonder where she stands, not because he is distant, but because he is not anchored to her validation. That absence of control creates tension, and tension invites engagement. Obsession grows not from attention, but from unanswered emotional questions. Importantly, this man is not unavailable because he is withholding. He is unavailable because his sense of self is already occupied. His emotional world is not waiting to be filled. He is kind, respectful, and warm. But he does not overinvest prematurely. He does not collapse his boundaries in response to interest. This steadiness is what makes his presence feel valuable rather than desperate. Many men sabotage attraction by trying to lock it down the moment it appears. They attempt to define the connection, secure commitment, or emotionally anchor the woman to prevent loss. Ironically, this need for control dissolves attraction faster than indifference ever could. Control ends intrigue. When everything feels predictable, emotional movement stops. True unavailability invites pursuit without asking for it. A woman begins to seek emotional clarity, not because she is confused, but because she is engaged. She leans in to understand, to feel, to locate herself within the dynamic, and as long as the man remains centered in his own life, that engagement deepens. But this balance is fragile. There is a critical moment where many men lose everything they have built. It happens right after attraction becomes visible, and it is where most emotional dynamics collapse. The collapse usually happens at the exact moment a man believes he has succeeded. She shows interest, becomes warmer, more responsive, or emotionally open. And instead of remaining centered, he panics. That panic is rarely visible as fear. It disguises itself as eagerness, availability, and emotional attachment. He begins adjusting his life around her. He responds faster. He shares more. He tries to secure what he believes is fragile, and in doing so, he quietly hands over emotional control. This is known as frame collapse. The man's internal frame shifts from self-directed to externally anchored. His emotional stability, once independent, becomes tied to her reactions. Women feel this shift immediately. The grounded presence that created attraction dissolves. Replaced by subtle neediness, the dynamic reverses. She no longer wonders where she stands. She senses control returning to her hands, and with control, obsession fades. Attraction does not survive equality of emotional dependency. It survives polarity. When a man becomes emotionally attached too quickly, he unconsciously communicates that he needs the connection more than she does. That need erodes tension. The mystery disappears. The internal replay stops. What once felt magnetic now feels familiar and safe in the wrong way. This leads to the final rule that governs emotional addiction. A man must be willing to lose her, not as a threat, not as a tactic, but as a genuine internal truth. His identity cannot be built on her presence. His sense of meaning cannot collapse if she leaves. When a man is emotionally independent, he signals self-mastery. He signals inner authority. And authority is deeply attractive because it cannot be taken away. Addiction forms when a woman realizes she cannot emotionally control a man. When his center remains intact, regardless of her choices, her nervous system stays engaged. She feels, rather than manages. She wonders, rather than predicts. That is the space where attachment grows. Women do not get addicted to words, money, status, or lifestyle. They get addicted to emotional experience, internal stability, and the absence of emotional control over the man. When a man stops trying to impress, stops needing approval, and stops handing over emotional power, attraction and emotional addiction naturally follow.